Howdy, howdy. It's time to do a little bit of live streaming for some testing. I did some calculations and I actually found that the High Elf Spears in my calculation should beat Dwarf Warriors of the Great Weapons pretty handily. And I thought, well, I wanted to test it, and then of course I thought, well, maybe I should just test High Elf Infantry in general, because most of the people who are playing dwarf builds are kind of centering around some ideas for backline pressure, namely Trollhammer torpedoes and artillery, and their Rune of Wrath and Rune, and sort of managing, centered around managing the single entity models that are the chariots, the nobles on a chariot, and chariots in general, and really that's what it's looking at managing. And there's big differences in builds that are have to do with the front line. I've seen some builds have really a full 6 Longbeards as a front line. Some have Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons as a front line with backed up by hammers. And I thought, well, I might as well, because I did this calculation where I was showing that the spearmen should beat Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons pretty badly. I thought, well, I might as well just do some of that testing. So if you haven't seen my testing before, I just use pick any general and I leave them in the formation they start in so that the testing can be repeatable. This is not how they actually engage in combat. I know this, and I have a set of tests that are based on formations that show what effect formations have on the test. So I thought I would do this where I just go through and start doing the testing. And I wanted to do the testing against the Dwarf Warriors with the Great Weapons first, because by all rights, the High Elf Spearmen should get their tails kicked in by the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, because the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons are just a base infantry. They don't have anything special about them except the Dwarf magic resistance. And oh hey, Argonaz. How's it going? I'm going to try and get this live chat popped out. Okay. Whoops. Well, that did something. All right. Hey, Rook Boss, how's it going? Anyways, the idea, well, and you'll be morning, you'll be interested in this, Rook Boss. I'm going to do some testing on some High Elf Infantry. This is, I could do a little amount of testing, but I want to do a lot to find out really the optimum infantry to bring against the High Elves, because I know there's differences in builds whether you bring Longbeards. I know you like to bring Longbeards backed up by Trollhammer torpedoes. Umaze likes to bring Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons backed up by hammers and Trollhammer torpedoes. So I kind of wanted to see how the Dwarf infantry plays out against the High Elf infantry. The main three you see are of course, Spearmen, White Lions, and of course Swordmasters of Hoeth. And like I said, when I did my calculations, Spearmen beat Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons pretty handily, so I wanted to test it and see exactly what that looks like when you do the testing as far as how they match up. And there's another calculation that I want to take into account, which is called seconds per gold, where if you're going to lose with an infantry unit, you really want to lose as slowly as possible. So you want to take into account how long can your unit last against another unit in terms of seconds per how much gold you spend, because then you can sort of optimize which front line goes against who and for what reason. And you can see here the High Elf Spearmen, I already did one test. I'm going to do 7, and each are doing quite well. And that even without their martial prowess, they're able to sort of hold their own in the end. It's very close. But these units are both worth 500, and you would think Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons would kick the snot out of High Elf Spearmen, but this is just not the case. So 5130, they last forever though. It takes a very, very long time for that battle to go off. So 5130, Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, and the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons finish with 532, and the High Elves finish with 971. I think they both have the same leadership. So you can see here the Dwarf Warriors Great Weapons are getting the crap beat out of them in terms of the gold loss in that scenario. So I'll just keep testing. I'm going to do 7 tests of each because I want it to be fairly accurate, just because this is me relaxing. I'm not doing anything but just chilling out. Hey, Frostbeard de Bronze, how's it going? Orc Boss, if you want to just drag the fight longer, you can do it with different formations. Yeah, so Orc Boss, that's, I always talk about, I just do this testing, so it's very repeatable. So it's always going to be the same. And I have a full set of videos going over formations. So I know you like to take that engagement by opening up your formation and creating sort of a T. You can do, and that's actually quite effective. And the testing I did shows exactly that, and you do that periodically, depending on either you want to make the engagement last longer, you want to open up a lane for your guns to fire. So I know that effect, and we have videos showing the effect and proving the effect. I have a nice little graph that shows that effect. So I like to do the testing where I don't change the actual formations in the testing, so it's super repeatable over time, because I want to be able to come back to this test 2 years from now and be able to do the same thing. And I have been able to do that with the Lizardmen, which has been quite interesting. So 5130, let's just double check 5130. Okay, so we'll get that test over. And again, the calculations, I should try to put the calculations up on this computer as well, because it's just it's sort of a shortcut. And I was testing it to see, and I came over this Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapon Spearman matchup, and I'm like, oh my god, the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapon lose by quite a bit. And I thought, that doesn't seem right, but my calculation apparently is correct. These Spearmen are beating the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons pretty handily. And I will say, I've said for a long time, Miners, Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, and Longbeards with Great Weapons are very underpowered in terms of infantry engagements, and this just goes to show it. Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons are actually the best unit of the 3 in terms of how they perform, and High Elf Spearmen are beating the tar out of them at the same price. Now, I'm not saying High Elf Spearmen are overpowered. They're not. High Elves need a good... That's their cheapest unit. It has to be good in multiple engagements. I'm saying the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons are underpowered, and including Miners and Longbeards with Great Weapons as well. Rook Boss, how did you do with the match? Haven't been able to catch you live. Still waiting. I mean, my matches are going to show up. I think they're scheduled to air this week for the tournament. But yeah, you can see the High Elf Spearmen. I mean, they still have martial prowess, 22 and 50, and they will lose it. I mean, but by the time they've lost it, they're so far ahead of the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, they really have a hard time catching up. Yeah. Well, I see High Elf Spearmen often compared to Empire Spearmen, and I don't think they're the same. I know that you can beef up Empire Spearmen with chevrons, so they actually get slightly better stats than the High Elf Spearmen, but they don't perform quite the same. 5335. Okay, let's go to Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons. 1134. This looks like my calculation. This battle right here. Yeah, they still have half health left. My calculation showed they would still have half health left. I'm like, what? 3010. Calculations though are really hard to make go right. So 169 gold. Like, they're absolutely obliterating the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons. We'll see if the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons can at least take a match off them. Interesting though is Longbeards with Great Weapons kick the crap out of them. Well, they're a lot more expensive, but it is what it is. And basic Longbeards, it's because of the there's a couple of effects that come with armor, but it's a number of hits to kill that's a really important number. It's a hidden number that you're never going to see unless you do the calculation. And there's like some little secret unit matchups where you can get these special hotspots where are really interesting, because if a unit takes 3 hits to kill another unit and it's hitting 25% of the time, it's going to have to swing at them 12 times. If it takes 3.5 hits per kill, it's going to need 4, because that point 0.5, they have to, like, to get a full chunk of health. Like, a unit with 78 health is exactly the same power as a unit with 1 health. It does the same damage and everything else like that. So it's this effect that you get on the edges of those matchups, where there's some special matchups where one unit just has a really nice matchup against another in terms of how many times it has to hit to kill one model. And when it comes to Great Base Longbeards versus Spearmen, Base Longbeards absolutely demolished Spearmen in the calculation, but I'm going to do the test. I think, yeah, do they have the same armor compared to Empire Spears? No. Orc Boss Hunter armor is required to be tanky, yeah, and hit points as well, yeah. Yeah, like, the Longbeards are a pretty unique unit in the game, too. They're just, they synergize so well with the Dwarf back line, and that's what makes Dwarfs powerful, that ability to hold in the front line and attack in the back, and attack with that powerful back line, like Trollhammer torpedoes and thunders and quarters and cannons and everything else like that. Black Orcs are good because of the hit points and armor. Yep, and Black Orcs also have a lot of reach with their weapon. They can actually, like, their animation is really, really good. That's one thing that does help set them apart. Well, Dwarf Warriors might win this one. Looks like it's going to be really, really close. 63 kills, 56. See, the High Elf Spears have 90 models, which also helps. They have lower health, though, so this is really, really close. I'm just going to press play. Just in case the High Elves lose, I want to make sure I capture it. Alright. Oh, this is so close. Okay. High Elves won. Heroic Boss, yeah, and they're big. This is true. Black Orcs are big. I mean, they got a long reach with that weapon. Hey, Jake, how's it going? Just doing some testing here, the Dwarfs versus the High Elves. Looking at infantry. Alright, so we'll go to 51-19 for that battle. 51-19. And Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons finished with 519. And Spearmen finished with 675. And Spearmen won again. So it's 4 losses in a row for the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, which is not precisely what my calculation showed. It would be worse than this, but so my calculations are off a little bit. But it is hard to calculate these things. Yeah, that's true. So essentially, just to recap, what I want to try and do is look for sort of some optimal matchups in terms of the math, and in the High Elf and Dwarf infantry engagement. And so I'm just curious. I just want to see how it's going to go. Really, I know lots of people do bring Spearmen against the Dwarfs because they're good at holding, and so that's sort of it's not a critical unit. It's just something that's worth knowing how these things match up, because you can have a little side optimization, we'll call it, versus High Elf Spearmen, I think, with Dwarf Warriors. The main unit, I think, that the Dowie infantry has to deal with is White Lions, because White Lions are cost effective, 800 gold. They kick the crap out of Longbeards, and you got to do something, right? You got to deal with them somehow. Now, usually the correct way to deal with them is your backline pressure, but sometimes it's hard, right? So I'm just wondering if there's a local optimum between one of the Dwarf infantry units that will work really good against get a good price for seconds per gold when they're holding, and I'm no hammers beat them, but I do want to figure out what that value proposition looks like. Jake Wu, basic Dowie infantry versus High Elf basic infantry right now. Yeah, Jake, I'm looking at the Spearmen first. Now, Spearmen, you do see them, and a lot of High Elf do bring them. Just sometimes even 2 of, sometimes none, but it's just worth knowing. But Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, Jake, what I had done is I did a calculation, and the Spearmen kicked the crap out of the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons in my calculation. I'm like, what? That can't be right. because I've never done this test before. So I thought I would test it, and sure enough, the spearmen are doing really good against the dwarf warriors with great weapons, and it's because of this hits per kill local optimization, and they're sort of their stat breakdown. So what do we got here? 5308. But interestingly, spearmen lose extra bad to longbeards, both the regular longbeards and longbeards with great weapons in the calculation. So it'll be interesting to see if that calculation holds up. So I'm trying to redevelop a spreadsheet to do calculations so I can try and find some of these little niche matchups a little quicker rather than doing all the tests. So Heil Spearman finished with 2610. And that's 5 out of 5 losses. It looks like the dwarf warriors are going to win that matchup once in a while, but not very often. We'll see. Maybe they win 1 out of 7. Basic longbeards with veterancy is always going to be the way. Yeah, I think 800-ish longbeards should pull the value. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I might just do that at Work Boss. Is find a veterancy level optimum as well, just out of curiosity, because I found a nice level. Nice. It's not the best for lizardmen now, but I've yet to test it in an actual battle. But I do have my army built with the correct veterancy for longbeards, so that they beat the cohort of Sotek very handily, Saurus warriors with shields handily, and obviously they crush red-crested skinks. And they have 6 chevrons. I mean, it's a really high level. It used to be 4, but a lot of changes have happened since I did that testing 2 years ago, which is why I really like to do repeatable testing, because then I can go back and see what has changed and by how much. So Saurus warriors with shields are even better than they were versus the dwarves 2 years ago. Yeah, you can see the spearmen here. I mean, when they have their martial prowess, they do really good. And they're holding almost kill for kill versus the dwarf warriors with great weapons. And the thing is, they have 90 models, where the dwarf warriors great weapons only have 75. Veteran skinks are very solid. I'd be interested to do a little testing if I cared more about lizardmen, but I don't. I love the Dowie, but lizardmen, whatever. I did do a test where red-crested skinks with 4 chevrons kick the absolute crap out of longbeards with great weapons. It's embarrassing. It's really bad. I think it's 4 chevrons. It brings them up to 720 or 30 gold or something, versus longbeards at 750, and they absolutely kick the snot out of longbeards with great weapons. Longbeards with great weapons. I know they got to pay something for that charge defense against large and the immunity to psychology and the aura, but I think they pay too much. And of course, you're seeing here dwarf warriors with great weapons. I mean, they don't have any of these things, and they're getting absolutely shit-hauled by these spearmen. It's like stomped. 52-32, 52-33. I think this is really demonstrative of how weak dwarf warriors with great weapons are, to where I think they should be. Because I really think they should be a little bit stronger. Dwarf warriors with great weapons here, 674. Because I don't think spearmen need to be nerfed. I think high elf spearmen are right where they need to be, for many reasons. I think dwarf warriors with great weapons need to be buffed. High elf, 1885. And lost again. Okay. Dwarf warriors. Let's go one more test, and this will be finished. Have you seen the latest dwarf replays I sent? No, I haven't yet. Work Bus. The games are really good. I mean, I've been trying to catch up. I had to get my game in. I had to get a game in, and I just haven't been on playing a whole lot lately, and I'm behind on all my recording. Like today's recording was my last. I have no recordings for tomorrow or anything, so I'm really behind. Where I have not caught up since I got back from my vacation. I just haven't been able to sit down and just get some work done here. And I've been doing some testing and stuff that is just fun. But I've had a few really good, interesting. So Jake, so Dowie need buffs. Jake, I would say that this is my personal feeling, and the data backs it up. Is there's Dwarf Warrior great weapons are generally poor. Hammers are okay, and but they're situational and expensive. The Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, the base ones they just don't perform in general. They're weakish and they're okay, but they don't perform in an infantry engagement. Miners are even worse, and Longbeards with great weapons are even worse than that. The reason you can bring these guys is they're actually decent anti-cavalry, and they're decent against single entity models like chariots, especially Longbeards with great weapons, and miners can at least get in their way and slow them down. But my opinion is miners, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and Longbeards with great weapons are really the only Dowie units in need of badly in need of a buff. With the exception of like heroes, like Thanes need something done, and obviously Master Engineers. I really would love Master Engineers to be useful, but in terms of a basic unit, these are the only ones that really need a buff. You could argue that Trollhammers need a nerf. I don't know. You could argue that regular Longbeards might just need a nerf. I don't know. But these guys don't perform like they should, I think. And you can see it right here. They're getting their asses handed to them by High Elf Spears, of all things. Like, this should not be the case. Like, there's no one who could convince me that High Elf Spears that are anti-large, have charge defense against large, and have a silver shield should beat up Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. They're both at the same price point. There's no faction justification. There's no justification at all that you could use to say that. And the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons are the best of the Dowie great weapon infantry, with the exception of those three units. And this is how bad they lose to High Elf Spearmen. 5240. Okay, we go to Dwarf Warriors great weapons 628. And South Spearman 1652. Okay, so there you go. They lose on average 100 gold. Seconds per gold. I think I need to make that a little bit bigger. We'll see. 0.87. This is the thing that I'm looking for. Seconds per gold. How long they're holding out for. So I'm going to save that. Now here's the thing. Because of the nature of how these units match up, I'm going to do a test with Longbeards with great weapons. Longbeards with great weapons in my test kick the crap out of High Elf Spearmen. Now they are a lot more expensive than they should, but there's the way their health matches up that makes a difference. Oh yeah, okay. See you later, Orc Boss. You have a good one. Jake, it's a tragedy. I don't know. It is what it is, right? It's been this way for a long time. I mean, if you know it and understand where these units are, I think you can sort of play around it, in my opinion. But I gotta actually change this. So we gotta go to Dwarfs, and we'll go to Longbeards with great weapons. And the Longbeards with great weapons, because of the way the health and armor, everything work out, they kick the crap out of the Spearmen in the calculation. But I'm really curious to see how they do in an actual test, because I have not tested it. I just calculated it. Okay. But it was worse than you would think. Jake, Suitable, how do you do all of those tables and calculations? So I've developed this sort of spreadsheet for a long time. And when I get to the spreadsheet again, I'll go over it bit by bit. So I'll just get this first test going here, and I'm going to say that's 40, probably 48. So 59, 48, 48. And I'll show you what each thing means. So we go back to the testing here that I just finished. So when I do the Dwarf Warriors with the High Elf Spearmen, I get the start of the battle, and that start of the battle is 59 minutes and 50 seconds. That's when the two armies came into contact and start doing damage to each other. Then I get the end of the battle when one of the units routs. So 53 minutes, 4 seconds. So they fought each other for 406 seconds. Obviously, I do that 7 times. I get an average down here. It's an average of 437 seconds. And then I look at their starting hit points. So Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons start with 5,850 hit points, and their ending hit points. So 852, and I do the same with the Spearmen. So Spearmen started with 5670, ended with 2330. So I can get a DPS. Each unit gets a DPS, and that's damage per second. So the Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons averaged 8.6 DPS, and the High Elf Spearmen averaged 11.7 DPS. Then when I get this gold difference, what I take is the starting hit points divided by the ending hit points, multiplied by their starting gold. And then I do that for the Dwarf Warriors, and then I subtract them. So they started both worth 500 gold. At the end, the Dwarf Warriors are worth 133 less gold because they only have 852 hit points left out of their original 5,850. And then I look at how fast are they getting that gold differential. So I divide it by minutes, so I get gold per minute. And I also look at gold ratio, which is how much I had to pay to get that gold differential. I look at the win lost, and then I'm looking at seconds per gold. That is, how much did I pay to last for 406 seconds. So then it gives me some way to think about the unit. I mean, it's not actually the end all and be all, because of course we're not testing with the right formation you normally see, and that's why I have formation testing to sort of give a different piece of that puzzle. But it is a one piece of the puzzle where it allows you to understand how units interact in an infantry engagement only. And it's not perfect, but it's something. And that's how I do my calculations. And then what I go through is I get my averages and I get my standard deviations on the bottom. So standard deviation basically tells you how swingy the results are or how much they vary. So when results vary a lot, that means one unit can win one time, the other unit can win the next time. When the results are very stable, that means one unit performs the same way against another unit all the time. And these are sort of the things that allow me to think about a unit. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. And then I look at the corrected. I just do a quick reference when I'm looking back here. So all this information means something, okay? It's the actual calculations and everything. I do a quick thing called corrected value over here. So if you want to quickly look at this, you would say Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons versus High Elf Spearmen are not worth 500 gold. They're worth about 400 gold in this fight. So I know that every time I put a Dwarf Warrior with Great Weapons up against a High Elf Spearman in an actual battle, I'm losing money. I'm losing gold. And we know, since you start with 12,400 gold, if you do that enough time, you just lose the battle because you're losing the engagement in terms of gold, the gold. Because you can actually lose a fight but win gold. And then if you had to do that enough time, you're going to win the whole fight. So there's a lot more comes to it when you're in an actual fight, because there's buffs and debuffs and fear and terror and charges and surrounds and artillery and all kinds of things. This is just to give me that one little piece of information that allows me to think about a unit. And I've done the most testing versus Lizardmen, and that's sort of where we have some very nice where I've gone beyond finding the right unit to finding the right chevron or experience level. So right now, base Longbeards with 6 chevrons are the optimum frontline unit for the Dowie, because they beat Cohort of Sotek straight up. They beat Red Crested Skinks. They demolish Red Crested Skinks. They beat Saurus Warriors with shields straight up. So you could just leave them in that fight and not worry about them. Then you can worry about the rest of your line. Now, is it worth it to spend the chevrons to get that unit to win versus having extra units? That's another conversation, because there's value in that too. Because the one thing 2 units can do that one can't is be in 2 places at once, right? I mean, so there's a lot of things to consider when you're building your army and looking at how units perform. This is just one small piece of the puzzle, but what I like about it is it lets me look at units and say, okay, so if I was going to be in a fight against the High Elves, and I did bring Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, I would, if I could remember to do it, I would never put them up against the High Elf Spearmen, because the High Elf Spearmen, I'm just going to lose unless I have nothing else to stop those High Elf Spearmen from getting into my line and getting into say, my Trollhammer torpedoes or something. So we'll get here to the Longbeards with great weapons. Now I'm also developing some calculations because I want to be able to shortcut testing to find some really local optimums. So this calculation I've been developing, I was playing with it today a little bit, and I found the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons got beat pretty badly by High Elf Spearmen. I didn't believe it, so I came home and tested it. Sure enough, they do. And in my other test, I found that Longbeards with great weapons kick the absolute crap out of Spearmen, and it looks like they're doing that here because they got it's because of a health versus damage calculation. So it's how many hits does it take for a Spearman to kill one Longbeard, and it actually takes 8. And because it takes 8 and they're only hitting I think it takes 8, it's something like that, and it takes it because it takes 8 and the Longbeards with great weapons only take 3 hits to kill one Spearman. The Longbeards with great weapons are going to kick the crap out of the Spearman. Now the Spearmen are holding on because they got their martial prowess. Once they get down past their martial prowess, this is going to go real fast, is what it should. And there they go. So now they're down past their martial prowess. The Longbeards with great weapons are now going to kick the absolute snot out of them. And, we'll see. Longbeards should handle High Elf Spearmen, no doubt. Yeah, I agree, Jake. Now, base Longbeards do even better, but here's the Longbeard with great weapons. Actually, it'll probably take less time, which is what I want to figure out. Okay, so that only took 5408. See, that took a long time still. That's a problem with Dowie infantry, is they take a long time to kill things, with the exception of hammerers. 5408. And what is that? Yeah, 340 seconds. I mean, it's almost 6 minutes. It's a real long time. Longbeard's great weapons finished with 3814. And High Elf Spearmen finished with 1166. And you can see, there we go, like the Longbeards pulled 91 gold off the Spearmen, and they won that quite handily. So, but Longbeards, great weapons, get the crap kicked out of them by White Lions and by Swordmasters of Hoeth. But Longbeards, great weapons do pretty good against chariots, so it's one of those things. Arose, Sue. There's a big misbalance with great weapon units in general, and Dowie get hit the hardest. Arose, I agree. The game is imbalanced towards armor piercing and that's right through. That's through infantry. That's through range. That's through lords. I mean, you look at the lords everybody likes. It is the guys who do armor piercing. In general. Now, a lord has to be pretty damn good before they're considered good if they don't do armor piercing, and those are the big support lords like Lariel and the Fey Enchantress and lords like that who don't do armor piercing, but they have so much more utility. They do really well. They get a lot of melee defense for just a bit of melee attack. Weapon strength is almost the same, just the AP values are inverted. Yeah, and so it just doesn't quite work out. And I think this is a unit that's as needed. Like the miners, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and the Longbeards with great weapons have needed for a long time to be looked at, I think, because they all definitely hurt the Dowie. So and I mean, they're useful and they're still useful in some situations, but they really don't perform in general. If they were buffed up, they don't have to be as powerful as, say, a Chaos Warrior with great weapons. Chaos Warrior with great weapons does not have charge against defense against large. It doesn't have immunity to psychology, and it doesn't have an encourage aura. But they should perform a little better in general than they do. But yeah, they kick the crap out of the Spearmen. Now the Spearmen, again, because of the way the High Elves work, the Spearmen have that nice martial prowess, +2 melee attack, +12 melee defense for half their health. And it's going to be more than half of their fight, because they always rout at like 1,000 health or something like that. So that's just the way it's going to be. But you can see, the Spearmen have +4, they have +18 melee defense plus melee attack. So So they do have quite a big advantage there in terms of the initial stats. They don't have the weapon strength, and obviously that armor is a huge difference. Like 100 armor is an optimum for armor. More than that, you start wasting it, and less than that, you're not optimizing it. So that's 100 100. Well, actually, 99 armor is the optimum, but we'll call it 100. But yeah, that's the problem. Is the Longbeard's great weapons kick the absolute crap out of the spearmen, but it takes forever. So I'm going to win the gold differential here, but I'm going to have an extra 250 gold tied up in this engagement for 4 minutes. 54-17. Or 6 minutes or whatever it is. Was it 17? 54-17. Longbeards with great weapons finished 42-21. And High Elf Spearmen finished with 12-15. Yeah, 134 gold. Very, very good performance there for the Longbeards with great weapons. And that's what my data showed, that they would actually kick the crap out of them really nicely. I'm going to do everything long term for this set of tests, because I really want to find the optimums in this. I think some of my training sessions with Aurora Boss really helped me see the power of Trollhammer torpedoes in this matchup in general, and I think seeing the difference between sort of the Yume's idea of a front line of great weapons versus Aurora Boss's front line of base Longbeards, I want to understand what are the optimum units. So the only way to do that is to test all the units versus all of the units against Spearmen, White Lions, and Swordmasters of Hoeth to find out my local optimums. And so that's what I'm planning to do. This test probably will take me a couple of weeks to end up getting it done, but I figured I might as well live stream it for those of you guys who like to chill out and watch testing. There's a few out there, right? So, and there aren't, when I talk about Longbeards with great weapons really underperforming, it's not like they don't have matchups like this where they're going to hit their local optimums, but every unit has matchups like this. Every unit in the game. Like there'll be sort of those special matchups where their health and versus their damage match up really nicely against the who they're fighting. You can see here, this was an absolute demolition by the Longbeards with great weapons, but it still took a long time. 5501. Still took nearly 5 minutes. Longbeards great weapons 4633. But they finished with like so much of their health left over. Spearmen 1212. 182 gold they pulled off them, which is amazing, actually. And the base Longbeards do even better by the calculation. So I'm going to test that too and see if they, so my calculation shows they did even better. They do even better than the Longbeards with great weapons via the calculation versus Spearmen. So I just want to see that. I am going to test everything. Miners with blasting charges, the Ekron miners, all the regiments are renowned, because I really do want to find out the infantry front, the best possible infantry front line versus what you would expect from the Spearmen, which includes all the infantry. I mean, 3 Trollhammer torpedoes, two at least, but 3 is your optimum backline. Whether it's cannons or bolt throwers or gyrocopters, Dragonback Slayers or Giant Slayers. I mean, those things are still, they're somewhat up for grabs, I think, depending on the map and depending on what you might expect to see from the High Elf player. But I think the infantry part of it can be solved. At least you can get something that's where you're going to say, listen, don't ever bring base Dwarf Warriors. Against the high elves, you want to bring dwarf warriors, as many as you can bring. Against Vampire Coast, you want to bring dwarf warriors, as many as you can bring. They are awesome against Vampire Coast and against wood elves. But maybe they're a unit you don't want to bring against the high elves ever. Maybe they're a unit you want to bring lots of, So I really want to see where those costs come out. So I am going to be looking closely at that seconds per gold to see how long units last. Even if it loses, a miner's going to lose fast, but perhaps a miner can last long enough to make it worth it in terms of how much gold you pay for how many seconds of holding the line. 53, 54. Okay, Longbeards with great weapons, 38.26. 12.10 for the Spearman. Okay, end that battle. Rematch. Yeah, the High Elf Spearmen are actually a really nice unit all around. Like, they do decent enough in infantry engagements, but obviously they're anti-large. The only weakness I would say these High Elf Spearmen is they have no mass, so they can get punted like 6 miles if they get charged from behind or hit while they're running. They're very, very low mass units. So I think Longbeards with great weapons are 200 mass per unit, while Spearmen I think are 100. I could be wrong though. I haven't looked at it precisely, but I think it's something like all elves are around 100 mass and dwarfs start at about 150 for a dwarf warrior, 200 for Longbeards, and 250 for Ironbreakers. So Ironbreakers have a ton of mass compared to everything else. That's why they're so powerful against charges. I mean, they have charge defense against all for one thing, and they have blasting charges to slow things down. But once a unit gets there, they have 250 mass, so they really slow things down. And if you saw the tests I did against on Dowie mass, I mean, Ironbreakers are pretty impressive. I mean, they slow things right down. It's really fun. 54-14. And I remember when the game first came out, Ironbreakers were so bad. But it's nice to see them sort of where they belong. Longbeards are great weapons, 37.95. And High Elf Spearmen, 11.06. And I think there are certain matchups where Ironbreakers are really, really good. Like they're actually very good in the Greenskin matchup right now. And that's changing because a lot more Greenskin players are starting to bring Doomdiver catapults again, because of the prevalence of dwarf builds have a lot of Ironbreakers and elite units. But Ironbreakers are also really good against Beastmen because they can just kick the tar out of Bestigor straight up, and they demolish all the other infantry as well. Plus that high mass is good against Minotaurs and chariots and everything else. The only thing they're really weak to is the one thing that I think all beastmen have to bring against the Dowie, and that's Cygors. I think the beastmen have to bring Cygors, well, at least one, maybe two, and Harpies, and then I don't know. I think, but you don't see that very often, which is really weird. It's really weird that you don't. Which I don't know why. I think it's pretty common. Maybe it's common knowledge. I know I played a game against Janet on occasion, long time ago, where he brought the Beastmen versus my Dowie. We had like a 4-match set, and I had a dwarf build with Ironbreakers, Slayers, and I think a few quarrelers or something, and just he never brought Cygors, and he only brought 2 groups of Harpies and won pretty handily, because that's just the Beastman units just can't do anything against Ironbreakers. It's Cygors that have to do the damage there. 54-16, I think, anyways. And I could be wrong. I'm not a Beastman main by any stretch. But I've played against them enough, I guess. 42-37. And Spearman finished with 1195. Rematch. One more. It's interesting to see that Longbeards grow up and do so good against Spearmen, because they also do very good against chariots, because they have good mass and that armor piercing is pretty good against them chariots. So this one, depending on when I get done the testing, it might show that 2 Longbeards with great weapons are good to bring. If you get no chariots and 4 spearmen, to bring your Longbeards with great weapons and just try and get them engaged on the spearmen while the rest of your army goes to work, and they will finish that battle with lots of health left and taking quite a bit of gold off the spearmen. That's the idea of doing this testing, to find those optimums, because I know for sure Longbeards with great weapons are very strong against chariots, because they have that extra mass and they have armor piercing damage compared to the low melee defensive chariots. So they're nice to have sort of a onesie twosie in the back line. I don't know if they're the right unit for the spearmen, or sort of the high elf matchup, as I don't even have them in my lineup, I don't think, or maybe I do. I'll have to double check. I'm not sure what my high elf build looks like. Hey Abe, how's it going? Yeah, I'll have to check on my build. I don't know if I have Longbeard's great weapons. I might just have them in the back line for some extra support. I did have Giant Slayers back there, but I changed that to Dragonback Slayers. It saves 50 gold, but you don't get as much damage done as quickly, but they're so much more robust against high elf archers, and a lot of high elves bring 2 archers, and they're because they're so strong against Slayers. 54-29. 54-29. Longbeard's great weapons. 3995. 3995 or 3955. Oops, some mistake there. And 1122 with the spearman. So to pull 119 gold out of that. I have to look at the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass too, but now I want to look at basic Longbeards, because in my calculation, Longbeards with great weapons were good, basic Longbeards were even better. So this will probably be 48, so I can just do that. Whoops, I have not done the date tested, did I? No. Copy V. 812, just so I don't forget when I did this testing. Okay, so basic Longbeards in that battle. And the thing is, basic Longbeards are good at holding the front line, but they're actually pretty awful at doing anything to chariots. They can slow them down a little bit, but they don't do any damage to chariots at all. Alright, see how they do against these spearmen though. Yeah, because Spearman actually finished pretty high in my 401 to 600 gold section. I think they finished top 10. They did very good. Just confirm that's at about 48 seconds. 48, 47-ish. They've already done damage, so 48 is good enough. And we'll let them fight. Yeah, this is sort of like a wet noodle fight. But you can see the Spearmen are losing a lot more health. Still no kills on the Longbeards. Longbeards absolutely, in the calculation, were even better than Longbeards with great weapons. and the cost 100 gold less. So we'll see. Still 0 kills for the spearmen. Wow. Holy, 20-1 right now. That's crazy. Yeah, Oru's shielded longbeards will fare better against almost all infantry, or against most infantry. That's absolutely true. That's why everyone uses them. I just, curious about the testing or the calculation that I'm building and versus the testing, and in the calculation, longbeards did way better than longbeards with great weapons, even though they were 100 cheaper in terms of the gold differential. So and you can see they still have their martial prowess, and they're getting their asses handed to them. Like, now their martial prowess is gone. I mean, that's it. I mean, now they're going to get really, like, you can see there in the longbeards, they're still 4,900 health. Really, really good. Jake's, yeah, you'll watch the replay. Have a good one, Jake. There we go. 53-52. And here's the thing, like, it's like taking 356 seconds. Basically, here's the other thing this is the problem with dwarf great weapons as well, is longbeards with great weapons, they finish this in 356 seconds. I mean, that's only 30 seconds longer than the longbeards with great weapons. The longbeards with great weapons take forever to kill anything. That's part of the problem. They need either a lot better weapon strength, maybe, better weapon strength or better melee attack. I don't know. Longbeards 47-44. Yeah, you can see 47-44 is more health than any of the longbeards with great weapons had left after that fight. And 1161 for the spearmen. You can see he pulled 226 gold off him in that fight. That's just crazy. So it's interesting that, basic longbeards will hold for a long time, but man, they're really, really good against spearmen. We'll see how basic dwarf warriors do, and of course how warriors of Dragonfire pass. One of the nice parts about warriors of Dragonfire pass, even though they are shielded infantry, they kill things pretty quick. Relatively speaking, like they will kill these spearmen faster than the longbeards for sure. I'm not sure how much faster, but I mean, we'll play with them. Maybe they're worth bringing just because maybe they can kill spearmen fast, and maybe they can do decently against white lions. We'll see. Shetland. Well, the method behind the magic. That's right. Here's, this is the boring part that there's only a few of us in the world that like testing, I think, and just enjoy doing this for fun. I mean, I find it super relaxing, and I really, really do enjoy it. So, Shetland, just so you know, I'm going through dwarf versus high elf infantry, looking for local optimums for dwarf infantry in this matchup. So I'm testing essentially every dwarf infantry versus spearmen, then every dwarf infantry versus white lions, and then every dwarf infantry versus swordmasters of Hoeth. So to look for those local optimums. So 54-36 on that. And 49.70, like, the longbeards are so good. 49.70. They just take so long to get this killing done. That's the problem. 12.11 for the spearmen. And 244 gold they pulled off them there. Crazy. In the battle. And we'll rematch it. Shetland, Apache. The warriors are so good. They have dedicated anti-infantry. Yep. And they're I feel like the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are probably a unit that is worth bringing in almost every matchup, because there's always a good matchup for them somewhere. I find it really hard myself because I don't have the micro to get them onto that right matchup every time. But I mean, they have that bonus versus infantry, and that weapon strength really does help them chew through things pretty quick. So I mean, I will test them against the spearmen, and I guarantee I don't know how they'll do for the total value they'll pull, but they'll chew through them pretty fast, and they'll chew through them faster than the longbeards with great weapons for sure. Shetland Apache, you Rourke Boss on Donjay. So, holy, Brent Verlin, Flaxland are the only guys I've ever met who liked really. I just love testing. I like, you know what's funny, Shetland? I probably tested 50 to 100 hours for every hour I play of quick battles. Probably 100 hours to one. That's at least 50 hours for every quick battle, for every hour of quick battle. I just love testing because it's relaxing. And I'm sure those guys will tell you too, testing is relaxing. Abe, would the Ironbreakers do better? Yes. So Abe, I am going to test the Ironbreakers in here, because I have a question about the Ironbreakers, not only versus Spearmen, which is not really an important part of the matchup. This is just, I just want to be very thorough. I have a question of Ironbreakers versus White Lions. I want to see how that matchup goes. I'm very curious. 5408. So like I have, you can see, I mean, this is the testing I'm going to do for the, like I have everything down to Norgrimling's Ironbreakers versus Spearmen. So I think that's what, about, I'm going to say 120 tests. And then I'll do 120 tests with all the Dowie infantry versus White Lions. And then 120 tests with all the Dowie infantry versus Swordmasters of Hoeth. And then I'll probably look for some Chevron optimums, in those matchups to sort of find my local optimums. And, then I'll make a video of it and present it all. Shetland Apache, it's the absolute bane of my existence. Everything at Abe. Ironbreakers beats elites and chaff. Yeah, Longbeards only beat chaff. Yep. Shetland, that's about my ratio with theory crafting armies and playing the game. yeah, that's true. They forced me to do it with them. Yeah, I hated it. Oh, that's funny. They forced you to test with them. It's like it's just like having to play a video game you hate with your buddies, when you're young. I know I never liked Mario Brothers, but all my friends wanted to see who could do the best, so we had to play it. One of those things. 47-17 with the Longbeards. Team with the Longbeards, HE Spearmen. They've got 1234. And we'll go here. But yeah, hopefully, Shetland, once I'm done this testing, I mean, we've got I'll probably end up being around 500 tests. I'll be able to get a good grasp of the local optimums for the infantry fight. I mean, the backline stuff is already pretty clear, right? I mean, troll armor torpedoes, at least 2, probably 3. Either, like a unit of slayers, maybe 2, and either 2 artillery pieces, whether it's cannons or I'm going to call it cannons, bolt throwers, or gyrocopters with brimstone guns, because I know you like the gyrocopters with brimstone guns. I have a really beautiful game on the channel where you actually beat the crap out of a high elf player with your gyrocopters, which is really nice. Actually, a really pretty game to watch. I actually prefer gyrocopters as well, though they're hard to control when they have like Sisters of Avalorn and their artillery. But I think gyrocopters with brimstone guns feel correct. Oh, I get why it's a good thing. It changes the game to the numbers, though, yeah. Brachycera? Is that the V Brachycera? Optimizing armies and seeing how different variables can affect each other. Totally, man. I'm like, haven't seen you in a while, Brachycera. You need to send me some replays, man. You totally got me hooked on 20 stacks. Totally hooked on 20 stacks. And I have so many armies now that are 20 stacks because of that one game you sent me. It was a beautiful game where you had a 20 stack and so a really nice cannon play. I mean, I just loved it. I find bringing 2 Dwarf Warriors is always better than 1 unit of Slayers. It's, that's the interesting thing is this is why you do this. Obviously, this is why I like to do this sort of testing, is to find some little optimums. Like the Lizardmen testing I've done, I think has been pretty useful all in all to find some of those optimums. But I like doing this testing just because it's interesting and it feels, and well, because it's really relaxing. I mean, I like to wind down. We're pretty busy at work, and I do a lot of traveling and spend a lot of late nights, so it's nice to just really chill out to do testing. My build's actually 4 cannons, 2 bolt throwers, 2 miners, hammer, RO hammer, longbeard, Thorgrim, 2 runesmith, and wrath. Oh, that's what you're running right now. Interesting. I saw you posted up a replay of that somewhere, Shetland. I don't know if I've downloaded it yet, but I'm gonna, and I'll have a look at it and I'll cast it. I mean, maybe I'll wait. If you haven't lost a game with it, maybe I'll wait like a month to cast it, but I'll cast it. Ruse. Regular longbeards have 10 more melee defense and same melee attack as a great weapon. Yep. The AP longbeards will not be worthwhile. Yep. Until 100 plus armor enemies. Yep. Then there's a hidden stat. Right. Well, 100 plus armor is when you start wasting armor. Right. 99 armor is the optimum. That's why longbeards are such a sweet spot in stats. They're really are. 100 armor, 48 melee defense. I mean, they could use better melee attack, but 48 melee defense is actually a real sweet spot for melee defense too. 54, 42. Because, you minus 35 from that, and 35 and 8. 35 and 8 is 43, from 48 is 5. So anything with over 5, I think it's over, no, you need 35 minus 8. It's 28. Yeah, you need 20. Anything with 20 melee attack and over, you get your full melee defense. So most things have 20 melee attack or over. They're really close. So it's actually a really nice optimum versus a lot of units. 5442. 4993 for the longbeards. And you can see here, this is where the longbeards have a kind of a special relationship to the high elf spearmen in terms of health. That's why they're kicking the crap out of them so bad. Because they have the amount of damage they do per hit versus the health per unit is an optimum in this matchup. Longbeards versus high elf spearmen. 12-12. That's the one thing calculations do that testing can't. It can help you find those really special optimums. They're real hard to find with testing. But they're easy to find with calculations. Okay, rematch. Shetland, yeah, it's funny. Nobles have gotten a total of 3 kills versus it. What? So wait, 99 armor is where non-AP damage basically does nothing, right? Yeah, well, 99 armor, any non-AP damage is always going to do 1. So when you have 100 armor, basically there will be a randomized roll, and you'll either get 50% you'll get 50% to 100% mitigation, essentially. So at 100 armor, you're only going to get 99 because you're always going to do 1 damage. So it averages 75% mitigation. So 100 armor, you average mitigating 75% of their non-AP damage. At 50, you average mitigating between 25 and 50 is what? 37.5% of their damage. And so anything over 100 armor, you start losing because it mitigates more damage because your average goes up, but you're always going to do 1 damage no matter what. I mean, if you had 1,000 armor versus something with no AP damage, he would do 1 damage to you every hit no matter what. So 99 armor is the optimum for the stats versus performance, because you don't lose anything after. So that's why longbeards are got a real nice stat, 100 armor. 95 is also a nice little spot. There is nothing with 99 armor, but 95 is actually pretty good too. I mean, you don't waste anything with 95, where 100 armor you're actually wasting 1 armor of stats essentially. So that's the way I look at it. So Brachycera. Most Dowie builds need melee units that will hold the line for ranged units. Slayers just die too fast. So I am going to be testing Slayers in this matchup, Brachycera, because I was wondering, with the Unbreakable, are Slayers going to be worth it against something like... Are Slayers going to be worth it against something like a Swordmaster of Hoeth, just for the amount of time it holds? So this is why I'm calculating the seconds per gold to see how many seconds of holding power do I get for the gold I'm spending. So I am going to do that calculation. Yeah, Shetland, that's one strength. There are others. Brachysera. I'm also beginning to find a stripped down Belagar Ironhammer is one of the most cost effective Dowie lords. So, Belagar, stripped down Belagar Ironhammer. I have a game recently, Brachysera versus a Work Boss, my coach, where I won that game against his, with my Dowie versus his Skaven, because Belagar is just an absolute beast in the end, because his leadership is great and he just keeps on fighting. And Belagar can be good. It's like, can be good, but he's only good when he has to be attacked. So he really gets good near the end of the game, I think. 54-59. Because when the other player has to attack him to win. 54-59. We got 51-30 for the Longbeards. Yeah, see, the Longbeards with basic Longbeards are finishing with a lot more health than Longbeards with the great weapons. Like, they're just pulling so much more gold out of this fight. H.E. Spearman, we got 1153. And like, they're averaging 220 gold per fight. Like, that's crazy. And they're pulling it out. The thing is, they're pulling that gold out faster than Longbeards with great weapons too. It's not only that they're winning more gold, they're doing it at a faster rate in terms of gold per minute. Longbeard. Okay, keep on fighting there. Rematch. Shetland, that's really helpful. Belly, it's all about Thorgrim in this patch, in my opinion. You know what? Thorgrim, I think, has made enough sort of elite Dowie builds viable that more people have to be ready for that. And if they're ready for an elite Dowie Thorgrim build, they're not going to be as good as other dwarf builds, which is the nice part about this change. That I don't know if Thorgrim is the most as the optimum build, but you're seeing enough of that build and that idea that it makes it easier for other Dowie builds. It's one of those things, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys know, if you have to prepare for multiple types of builds, it makes it harder for your own build. Whereas if there's only going to be one or two builds that you're going to have to think about, or one that's going to be super dangerous, then it just makes your build so much easier. Yeah, Thorgrim takes so long to use most of his HP. Like, everything else dead, and Thorgrim will be at half. Yeah, everything else will be dead, and Thorgrim will still be above half HP, which is true. Artillery, melee, doublesmith, Thorgrim, my basic template this patch. I know, I've seen a lot of your games, Shetland, and they've been fun to watch, to be perfectly honest. And interesting. And it's changing the meta. It's making it easier for everyone else to play. Brachysera. Thorgrim struggles if your enemy tries to pick you apart, though. Yeah, your enemy can just ignore him and kill everything else through forced pathing. Yep, that's true. It's absolutely true. I mean, the best quote I've heard is dwarf lords are difficult to kill and easy to ignore, and that's just the truth of it. I mean, honestly, I don't think other players should ignore a rune lord, but they do anyways, and runesmiths. But sometimes people will come and kill my rune lord and my runesmith, and it makes it way harder, because that's the only dwarf heroes or lords with lots of utility. 53, 52. 53, 52. Longbeards finished 49-17. Okay, High Elf Spearman finished with 1185. Just absolutely crushed. Okay. In the battle, a rematch. What about Grombrindle? Abe says people who didn't play Warhammer 1 still don't know how to do the build effectively. Yeah. So it's still a fairly safe build. Grom is okay versus Bretonnia. You know what, Shetland? After your game with that game with me and you, where you brought Bretonnia, I changed my build to bring Grombrindle, specifically because you tortured me with Lewin so badly. That actually made me change my whole build. Yeah. As Grombrindle, I could see how Grombrindle would be so much better in that build after that game I had with you. It was really opened my eyes. Because I think that actually might be... Grombrindle may be the best lord in that build. Like, it against against. He may be the best lord against Bretonia. I don't know. He feels. I think he feels pretty good. But the ability to trap Lewin, or at least give a scare to Lewin, would be pretty good. Brachycera. I'm always afraid of Dowie blob builds due to insane spells like Usef's Incantation of Desiccation that removes 44 melee and 27 defense in a 40-meter AoE. Yes. So, I mean, that's the problem with a blob, is you got to be worried about exactly those things. I agree 100%. But the thing is, that's the beauty of Dowie builds that are like that, I think, is there's enough of them around that someone might bring that Usef's Incantation of Desiccation against my dwarf build versus Tomb Kings, which is really wide, and then it does basically nothing. So that's the beauty of having enough players out there playing those elite dwarf builds that are risky. I agree they're risky, but it's at least it really helps make other Dowie builds better, because you have to prepare for it. I mean, if you prepare for a Dowie blob of death, then you're not going to be as strong as a wide Dowie build. Shetland, I think he really is the best lord versus Bretonia. I think you're right, because he has other things, because he has that magic damage, so he can bypass. There's a few units that have the protection of the lady or whatever, double negation, stand your ground. Yep, just cycle all three. Yeah, that's true. Yep, double negation, stand your ground. Okay, Spearman. 54, 24. 24. And 49, 29. Spearman 1145. Okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm just going to do my seconds per gold. I'm going to give that one more decimal. So 50. Where's this guy? Yeah. They are... yeah. So seconds per gold is 0.44 seconds per gold. You're getting 0.50 seconds per gold with the Longbeards. And what did we get with our... Yeah, see, this is why I do this. So this seconds per gold is how many seconds do you get of holding power? Well, mind you, these guys are winning, so winning versus losing isn't a good comparison, but how long do they hold for how much gold you pay? That seconds per gold is an important number, but it's interesting. But the Longbeards just are so much better versus Spearmen, but they take a long time. 326, but the same, that's interesting. The Longbeards took an average of 326 seconds. Longbeards with great weapons took an average of 328. It's almost precisely the same. 13.8 DPS versus 13.7. And you know, it's funny, I've always said that 50 armor is about the crossing point where AP and non-AP meet. And you can see that because Spearmen have about 40 armor. So that's where non-AP and AP meet in general. So you can see Longbeards are great weapons, and Longbeards do about almost the same DPS, damage per second. Okay, so Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. I think I'll test them next, because that'll be interesting. I think the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass will chew these spears up. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm going to do them all, but it is what it is. Yeah, that makes sense. Try them out some of the time. Abe. Also, the ability Grumbrittle has no fear is really useful. Yep. Shetland, I always pop it way too early. Shetland, I always pop it way too early too. Every time I want to use it and just make sure my units keep going, and then it's really at the end of the game when you want to keep that damn thing going. Like right near the end of the game when it's going to matter, but I always pop it right away. So I'm just too freaking impatient. Brachycera, now for the real debate. Cannons or bolt throwers? Boy, that is a debate. That is a real debate. Cannons obviously do a lot more damage and have more range, but bolt throwers are cheap enough not to really worry about. Yeah, are you trying to kill our camp? I mean, I have my Legionman build has one bolt thrower and I love it. It's just, and because it's not enough to really for the whole. It's like 550 gold is not enough for the whole Legionman army to dive it. Yet, if you just let it go, it's armor-piercing anti-large. I mean, it's going to do damage all day, right? Warriors of Dragonfire pass. Bolt throwers for life. Cannons kill, but you both let you pull someone in. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of like bolt throwers. The one thing, so bolt throwers are not as good against large as cannons, but they do so good against armored infantry. There's just bolt throwers are really, really nice against armored infantry, and then once the front line engages, they're really good against like, you know, like archers and stuff like that. Okay, so here we go. I said that these, okay, we call it 59-49, that these guys are going to do really good. I don't know how they're going to do for value, but they're going to kill them fast. So, what it's been taking 326 seconds, so I'm going to say 240 seconds. Well, I'll bet you they'll kill them in 240 seconds. So these are the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and that is that bonus versus infantry of 6, because that gets added to your weapon strength. So their weapon strength is actually 34 right now, and that matters. Oh, wow, they are just kicking the crap out of them too. Good. Interesting. 0 kills for the Spearmen, 9 for the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. Holy. Jeez, those Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, I mean, they're an interesting unit. Like I said before, I think there has to be a spot for them in every Dowie build, for the optimum Dowie build, because they can kill things pretty fast. They got one, they're 30 to 1 on the kills right now. They're freaking kicking the crap out of these Spearmen. 37 to 1? 38 to 1? That's unbelievable. Holy. And they're actually, how fast are they beating them? Well, it looks like it's pretty quick. We'll see. We'll see. They're about to rout. It's always a matter of getting them on the right target, though, because they don't have the mass that Longbeards have, and you know, they can be sort of beat up by chariots and stuff like that. So 55-19, pretty good. 55-19. 270. So I said 240, 270. So a little slower, like 30 seconds slower than I thought, but still not too bad. The value is going to be there, though, right? Let's say Warriors of Dragonfire Pass 4460, and Spearmen 1139. 233. That's pretty good. Interestingly, doesn't look like it's going to be a lot better, not much better value than Longbeards. But they kill faster. That's the thing. Longbeards actually outvalue them in a lot of matchups, but Warriors of Dragonfire Pass kill faster, which is not irrelevant when it comes to dwarf builds, because dwarfs just don't kill things very fast. But really, it's your backline that does the killing for you. It's your front line that does the holding normally. Both thrower cannons kill. Yeah. Are you testing hammers too, by the way? Yes, Shetland, I am. I'm testing every single dwarf unit, including Regiments of Renown, against Spearmen. Then I'm going to test them all versus White Lions of Trace. Then I'm going to test them all versus Swordmasters of Hoeth. I want to find those optimums. Then I'm probably going to do some chevron testing too to find some chevron optimums. Brachysera, why do they have 10 more leadership than any other artillery units, which is weird? Are you talking about high elf artillery? Because it has 75 leadership. I think everything else has 65, right? Yeah, bolters have very little collateral damage as well. Yeah, that's true. Abe, though, seeing how much cannons mow the enemy lines is quite satisfying. Not gonna lie. Hey, Abe, you and me, both love that same thing. I love watching cannons mow things down. It is very, very satisfying. And the sound, right? Brachysera, like I could listen to that sound. Like the guys who did the sound in this game did such a great job, especially with those cannons. They sound so beastly. It sounds great. How do miners distribute? Shetland, I will tell you. I just started testing because I did a calculation. I mean, at work, which I shouldn't be doing, but I just wanted to see if I could build a calculation to figure out some of these things, and I found that Dwarf Warriors, great weapons, in my calculation got beat up by Spearmen. I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. So I wanted to come home and do the testing. So I'm going to do miners, and I'm going to do miners with blasting charges. I'm going to do every unit. Bolt throwers have 75. Cannons have 66. Yeah. They were added later. Kills me, yeah. Yeah, CA is bad about consistency, Shetland. If it does, it hurts everybody because it's like it's also the fodder for unnecessary arguments on the forums and stuff like that. You see all kinds of, you know, like I've been reading the forums a lot lately and been starting to post there. I've never posted in the forums before about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and you see people no one likes to stay on topic. Everyone likes to say, well, if you want this buffed, I need this buffed. Or you should say, instead of talking about things as they are, they use things like, well, this guy has 75 leadership, well, these guys have 66. Well, really, it shouldn't be that way. Rourke Boss, yeah. Sad face. Shetland, okay, I thought you were going up in value. Shetland, I'm just jumping around because I'm most interested in seeing how these guys do. Then, but I will test every single unit. 55, 54. Yeah, look at that. 235 seconds. So that was my guess. 240 seconds. Word direct fire pass. 4709. 09. HE Spearman. 1153. 262 gold. Okay, that was pretty good. Yeah, I'm curious to see if miners with blasting charges can pull positive value versus the spearmen, because they might be able to. They might be able to. It's hard to know until you do the testing though, because they do only have that 40 armor, and their shields aren't going to do anything against blasting charges. It's one thing that's interesting is that. When you add chevrons to a unit, you add vigor. But I think the regiments of renown don't have the extra vigor. Because you're going to look. These guys are winded. We'll see when they go to the next level. Tired. So they're getting tired at the same rate. So I think that's one thing that when you chevron up your units, where you do get a bit of an edge over a regiment of renown, is you get the very tired. It's going at the same time. Is you get a bit of an edge on vigor by chevroning up a unit. Yeah, exhausted, just about. I think you get a bit of an edge there because I think they give you the stats and the abilities, but not the vigor. 5610, holy crap, that was very fast. 219 seconds, Warriors Dragonfire Pass, 4687. Like the Warriors Dragonfire Pass are really strong chaff killers for the Dowie. That's, I know they still kill slow, but that's I guess the ultimate chaff killers are miners with blasting charges, but 5610, so 4687. Did I already put that down? 4687, I did. 1129 for the Spearman. 1129. Okay, win. 261 gold. They might pull more gold than the Longbeards, maybe. They're doing pretty good so far. Reading CA forums like watching my daughter's playing group. People just spam there to get their favorite faction better so they can win. Kind of like you have to sort through the mess, but there's a lot of good and interesting ideas. I mean, if people could take them for ideas and not get all bent out of shape. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. People are fighting they're almost like fighting to the death to make sure something that they don't like gets buffed. Because it all depends on your perspective, and every single person has a bias. I mean, if you like kitey armies, well, you hate units that make kitey armies not work good. If you like defensive armies, like me, you hate units that make defensive armies not work good. I mean, it's just... you can't help yourself. It's just the way it is. And then, it's aside from that, it's liking factions, liking play styles, liking this, that, or the other. Like, people who love rush builds hate builds that are not rushy, right? They hate kite builds and they hate defensive builds. They just want to rush both armies into each other and smash them together, right? And then you got everyone, I'll say, half of the people on the forums are fighting tooth and nail for their faction, as though that everything they say in that forum is going to make their faction better or worse. And then about half the people there just want to talk about ideas in an interesting way. But it's the half that are fighting tooth and nail are much louder and more insulting. 55-49. But there's still interesting conversations there to be had. 46-51. Spearman, 1197. Okay, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how these Warriors of Dragonfire Pass do against White Lions. They're going to lose faster than the Longbeards for sure because they have less health. But will they give them enough damage to make it worth it? That'll be my interest in that fight there. Just arrived from work, watching Sue live stream and drinking coffee. My favorite part of the game is when the meta is nerfed and then watching the carnage in the forums. You know, Brocky's here, when it was absolute carnage for a while when Scave and Lizardman all both got buffed so hard off that last change, because it was all about the Jezzails and I know Jezzails are really, really strong, and so are the Doom players, and then there was the Ancient Salamander, but it was holy, you're right, carnage is the right word. It was so funny. People were they're outraged. And the arguments were crazy, because some people are like, oh no, they're just fine the way they are. Yeah, how about a unit that has a range of 300, is invisible and can shoot without being seen and kills lords in 6 shots? No problem. Oh, 55-46. 55-46. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. 4667. No matter when units are really good or really bad, ultimately it matters, but it's also, it's fun to try and find ways to do good. I think maybe it's because I played the Dowie and nothing but since I started playing. I've never really thought about picking another unit, picking another faction for a matchup. So if I see a bad matchup, someone's going to bring High Elves against me or Chaos or something, I'm just going to play it. I'm not going to switch factions, so I kind of like the idea of trying to get better and thinking about ways to get better, even if the match is unbalanced. I think that helps keep me calm. So 1105 here. And 1. And I think it makes it interesting. It's fun to be the underdog sometimes. It's not fun to be the underdog all the time, but it's fun to be the underdog sometimes and to win despite having a disadvantage. I think that's very satisfying. Internally, I find it very satisfying anyways. Every time I beat the High Elves or Chaos or Skaven or something, I find it deeply satisfying because that's a matchup by all rights I should lose. So I think that's part of the enjoyment of the game. If every single game, it'd be like if everyone could only play Empire, well then I don't know I guess it would still be satisfying to win, but it wouldn't be the same because everyone would always have the same. It's I know there's 2 ways of thinking about it, because lots of people in competitive really enjoy where everyone has the same thing, and you see it in racing. I like racing a lot too. It's the argument between sort of NASCAR or a single car series in Formula 1. I love Formula 1, where a lot of people like NASCAR because all the cars are pretty much the same, or they even where Skip Barber, stuff like that, where every car is not kind of the same, it's exactly the same. So it's different ideas of competition, but I like, that's why I like football and stuff like that, where everyone has the same rules, but not everyone has the same coaching staff, facilities. If you in baseball, if you're a New York Yankee, you've got an advantage over everyone else in the league because you have, you're going to get paid a lot more money than everyone just for the ad revenue you make, and you have better facilities and more tradition and all kinds of stuff, right? So it isn't fair, but if you're someone who hates the Yankees, beating the Yankees is super satisfying for you. So it's kind of one of them things. I don't know, it's not fair, but it's super fun. 5531. Where's Dragonfire Pass? 4786. 1141. Holy, 272 gold out of that one. I think the Warriors Dragonfire Pass are going to pull more value against Spearmen than Longbeards. Zach be saying, what's up, man? How are you doing? Gold Chevron White Lions are beastly with martial prowess. Yep. See you in a bit, Abe. Dwarfs and elves are gross. Zero. Zero, I've seen you play some nice dwarf games. I know you don't believe that. As soon as a nerf thread, people freak out. I'm just trying to catch up on chat here. Shetland, really good is more harmful than really bad. Really good defines the meta. Really bad just doesn't get used. Yeah, that's true. You're right there, Shetland. Brachiosaurus, when the Chaos Dwarfs come out, I may stray from the light. Me too. I'm totally going to use the Chaos Dwarves. Chaos Dwarves are going to be the number one best faction in the game as soon as they're in to the end of the game. You essentially take dwarfs and every strength the dwarfs have, you add cheap chaff units and hobgoblins, fast units, hobgoblins and wolves, massive units and monsters and demons and slaves that are super cheap, and then you add that to dwarfs. There's just no way that Chaos Dwarves aren't going to be the best faction as soon as they're in to the end of the game. Silverhorn. Anyone use Thanes? No. Brachihorn, Silverhorn. So I've seen some testing on Silverhorn of Vengeance, and it's not as awful as I thought it was. Orc Ross. I think factions that are underpowered should get more attention. Yeah. When Game 2 first released, I posted on the forum addressing Handgunner issue and Demi issue. You actually had some nice videos in that too, Orc Boss. I really like those ones. Brachiosaurus, I agree. I would also like to see maps with greater variation in terrain. Man, I wish they would do some work on the maps. They could get rid of white line issues. They can do a whole bunch of stuff. Work Boss. Now I'm glad they both got addressed. It took a while, but I'm happy with the result. Yeah. Zachary saying, I'm doing pretty good, man. Chaos. Oh, it's Chaos Day today, hey? Kicking some butt with Chaos. Are you playing all the Lords, Zach? Or just like Sathoril and Kolek? Like when you play in these sort of stints, do you try all the Lords out or all the units, or you just try really to optimize your builds during that time? Shetland, good on Giant Slayers. I used 2 silver horns with 2 of them. Really? That's Cav? Cool. All right, get these Warriors Dragonfire Pass going. I have a hard time reading and testing, but I mean this is just me chilling out anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I get it done fast. Zach, I tried to take competitive builds, but I think Arcane can be really good. Oh, okay. For his AoE. Okay. I don't like Kolek personally. I know I see a lot of them because I know that I like watching Turin's channel, and he likes playing Kolek. So I mean, I don't know if he's competitive or good, but I just see him a lot with Chaos because I know Turin enjoys him. I'm surprised you don't see more Chaos Sorcerer Lords because they're pretty cheap, and I think you can put them on a dragon, and like even if you put them on horse, they're cheap. Like I know I had to bring a Chaos build against Tomb Kings once. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I brought a Chaos Lord of Fire on a horse, and he was super cheap. I was able to go super wide compared to anything else. 55, 56. I mean, I still got my tail kicked in. I was playing against Pharaoh of War, and he beat the crap out of me. But I mean, 55, 56. But I don't think a Fire Wizard was a super bad choice in the matchup. It didn't feel bad. I mean, I just lost because I played poorly. I don't think it was the pick. 56. Well, it partly was a pick. So I picked a whole bunch of whatchamacallits. I can't remember. A unit I shouldn't have picked. I picked 5 of them. It was a bad choice. Arcane is the way to go to beat vampire counts. Really? Okay. Zach, I like them, but they're easy to snipe. Okay. Their horse is too slow. Gotcha. And they're not powerful enough to fight back. Okay, that makes sense. Warriors Dragonfire Pass, 4696. And the spearmen, 1121. Holy, 257 gold. Where's your Dragonfire Pass pulled even more gold versus them spearmen? Very, very nice. So, you know, and they killed him at an average of 243 seconds. So I said, I guess 240, but an average of 243 versus 326. I mean, that's a minute faster than a Longbeards or Longbeards with great weapons. So there's got to be a place for Warriors of Dragonfire Pass in this build. I mean, not that you see spearmen all the time, but people do bring them. Maybe I'll go back up to miners. So I'll save this and I'll go back to the start here with miners. Fireball to pressure mortis, yep. Makes Chosen immune to terror, okay. Fire Wizard is the meta versus Tomb K, okay. Slayer of Kings to beat down dragons and stuff, okay. Yeah, I mean, Archaon, okay, I mean, he should be powerful, right? He's the Lord of the End Times. Like, in my mind, the units that bother me that are super powerful are like the Rune Lord. Because he's like nothing. He's not a hero. He's just a Rune Lord. But he's the best Dowie Lord. And, you know, like when you see, what is it, a Glade Lord on a dragon for the Wood Elves, I mean, that shouldn't be the best Lord ever. It should always be the worst pick that you pick for something that's really cheap. It really bothers me that when Legendary Lords aren't the best. And, you know, technically I would like to see Legendary Lords cheated better as they are more known. So, for example, I mean, you know, out of Wurzag, Skarsnik, Azeg, and Grimgor should probably be the best. And then maybe Skarsnik, and then maybe Azeg or Wurzag. I don't know. I don't think they're nearly as well known. And you just respect the High King. Yeah, I think, the High King, Thorgrim should be the best for the Dwarfs. He should be the best. Zachary saying, did you draw some idea? Oh, you guys were practicing. Had the vampire count build before it. That did remind me, though. Okay, so we're going to get the miners. And then we'll go miners with blasting charges. We'll end that battle, but we have to switch sides. So I can get my data a little bit easier. Okay. We'll get High Elves here. And Dowie. Miners, High Elves, start the battle. Archaon is very solid in a lot of matchups. That's good. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, actually, because he was like the Never Chosen, right? The meme. Did try your build versus Bretonnia on ladder. But 6 peasant bowmans killed your Shaggoth? Well, Thorgrim is the best. Shetland, man after my heart. He's the best in some builds. So I don't see your point. Alright, so let's see how these miners do. Boom. Okay, 59-51. They get there fast. 51. Okay. Alright. And then I'm going to do miners with blasting charges. We'll see if the miners with blasting charges can get the job done versus the spearmen in terms of pulling value out of them, right? Practice a bit Bretonnia Chaos after I crashed by him on ladder. Solid session. Nice. Nice. Yeah, miners are obviously going to lose, but the thing is, how much value can they pull? Or how long can they hold for their cost? This is where the seconds per gold is going to matter. Is it going to be worthwhile just to have a whole bunch of miners in your front line and just to because you like as you've mentioned, Rourke Boss. I mean, you can make miners last a lot longer if you just go sidelong in your formation. You can delay. You can use them to delay even harder than what's going to be here. But you can see they're delaying pretty good. They're doing just fine, like down to 56 minutes. Like 3 minutes with a miner, that's 325 gold tying up 500 gold. I mean, they're going to lose, and they're going to lose value, but they're holding them up for a very long time. So maybe that's the right way to go, right? Okay, 54-50. Yeah, they held him for 5 minutes. Like a miner at 325 gold holding a spearman still for for 5 minutes is fine. The battle's over in 5 minutes. It's like the miners losing at the 5 minute mark is not going to matter anymore. I don't think. How many hit points do the miners have left? 1220. But that's not to say they're the right unit to pick here. Just 4064 for the spearmen. Because the spearmen pull like 100 gold off them. That is quite a bit of gold. Like this is not a cheap way to do it. But I mean, if you hold things from getting to your back line for a period of time, that's not too bad. Bretonia Day was super fun. Worker Boss, you know what? I think you should try Bretonia to Zachary. Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, when the very first tournament I was going to be in, where I had to play something other than the Dowie, I thought Bretonia would be good because I do like their low tier infantry, and I like the way they test. But I mean, I couldn't control them. Bretonia just routes nonstop. Like that's all they do is route. Your whole job as a Bretonian commander is getting units that have routed and rallied and putting them back in the fight in the right place. It's really hard. It's too hard for me to do anyways. Veteran miners might pull heaps of value out of lines. You never know, hey? Like, that's the thing is I want to find some of them key value points. So I'm going to do a full and complete set of tests versus the High Elves on the infantry side and get the front line down so that I really understand it. And, so that I can look at how am I going to... Like, it doesn't mean if one unit is the best, that's the only unit, but I want to look at the range of units that are going to offer the most, the best possible combination in general. And, there's something to be said for miners. You can have lots of them, and they don't stop chariots, but they can get in the way. And they can get in the way of things that are getting into your back line. Like, they'll slow down swordmasters for about 30 seconds. And they'll slow down white lions for, 30 seconds. But it's hard to say. Like, once we get to the test where miners versus those things, we'll really see. Because it's going to come down to that seconds per gold equation. That's the one I really want to find out in this set of tests is... what is the optimum if I'm going to lose a fight versus spearmen versus white lions or versus swordmaster Hoeth? Which is the best unit to lose the fight with in terms of seconds per gold? Who gives me the most amount of holding time for the least amount of gold? 55-32. Well, that's not too bad. 1208. Spearman 3907. In battle, a rematch. I have a feeling the miners with blasting charges are actually going to do not too bad against spearmen. Shetland Apache, you're sending too many in at once. Zachary, gold chevron men at arms can hold up Graveguard for a while in battle. Yep. I think Ekron miners may trade upwards versus white lions. So I am testing the Ekron miners too, Zach. I'm testing all the regiments of renown, every single dwarf unit, so that I don't miss anything, and I do it nice and thoroughly. Because I like doing this anyways. So I am going to test every single dwarf infantry unit versus spearmen, versus white lions, versus swordmaster or Hoeth to find those local optimums. Plus, I'm going to do some chevron testing to find some local optimums for chevrons. Because I've made a few chevron curves already, and I have videos with the value of chevrons and having what those curves look like. So I should be able to go back. I'll just look over those curves and see if there's anything that looks like it'll get there. And then just chevron them up and test it. Like, the thing about Ekron miners is if you can get all three of their blasting charges off, it almost doesn't matter after that. You get their value. The blasting charges are worth a lot. Like even against something that has some armor, they're still going to be worth about 75 gold per blasting charge. But against something that has no armor, they're worth anywhere from 200 to 400 gold, depending on what you're throwing them at. Like, they're at least worth 200. So they can get all their value back, potentially, Ekron miners, with just their 3 blasting charges. They're all 600 gold, and then they're immune to psychology because they have that frenzy, and they can. I mean, they're not the greatest in combat, but they're not terrible. They're probably worth They're probably worth the 500 gold. They're probably worth a dwarf warrior with great weapons in combat with no blasting charges. It'd be close. 55-25. And I know there's some people who are on the channel who watch this channel that really, really swear by Ekron Miners in some matchups. And I do have them in one of my matchups. I can't remember which one, but they're really good. Who did I have the Ekron Miners in? Jeez, I can't remember. But in the matchup I have them in, they're really good. They're seriously good. 1176 for the Miners. 1176. And the Spearmen, 4026. That's going to be about 110 gold-ish. They're going to pull. And then you have an unarmored frenzy great weapon unit. Yeah, an armored frenzy great weapon unit. Exactly, Zach. That's exactly like when you're done using up your blasting charges. You have a unit that is not a pushover for their gold. I mean, I don't know what their stats are. I mean, I am going to test them against the Spearmen. I'm going to test them against the White Lions. I'm going to test them against the Swordmasters of Hoeth. So I'll find out exactly how they hold up. Bretonnian Peasant Star Wars was a legit thing when Fae was not nerfed. Really? See, I like Bretonnian peasants. I like them because for 100 gold, I mean, all they have to do is defend any other unit in the entire roster except for another unit of peasants from one charge, and they get all their value. So just that logic alone has to makes them so they have to be valuable. They have to be. You know, I don't know if you can afford to always bring like 5, but you know, they've got to always at least be a 2 of pick. I mean, I can't think of I guess I don't know what. Like how they could not get their value back at 100 gold. Yeah, these miners are holding up very nicely versus the Spearmen. But they're losing a lot of value, but they last for a while. 55-22. 55-22, yep. Again, 4.5 minutes. Miners, 12-28. Just losing big on the gold. 41-44. Yeah, that'll be a bad one. 41-44. 120 gold there. Pretty consistent results, though. The standard deviation is really low. Renotch. Vampire counts. Just insta-terrified. Well, maybe. You could be right there, Zach. I mean, yeah, you're probably right. They might, you know, but the thing is, against vampire counts, I mean, if they stop one charge from anything, they've got their value. Not when they are steroided up with the Grail Reliquary. You know, I'd love to see it. You could make them immune to psychology, plus if you somehow give them is it plus 12 leadership by the Grail? But like the thing is that peasants, I guess if they're not terrified away and they get in a straight up fight, the testing I did on them too is they're not actually that bad in combat. Now, when I say that, understand that it's not that they're going to win a fight, but because they're only 100 gold, they don't have to do a whole lot of damage to something else before they get their value back. In terms of a straight up fight, that's not even just stopping something from charging into something else. I mean, that alone gets their value, because you can lose half the value of a unit easy on a charge. I see a lot of charges where it'll take off to a third to a half. So you take off a third to a half of a unit that's worth 600 gold or 800 gold. That's anywhere from 200 to 400 gold. That peasant only costs 100. So, you know, you stop one charge with that peasant, you've doubled your value. Like even if you're stopping a charge or slowing down a charge against peasant bowmen. They kill zombies. I wonder if they do. I don't know, Zach. I mean, I think I tested that a long time ago because I was curious, because zombies at 150 gold were really overpriced. I think they might actually kill zombies. 5511. Miners, 1199. It's almost okay. I'm gonna have to stop for supper here pretty soon, but I think I'm gonna go through and we get miners and blasting charges done, because I want to see if the miners blasting charges can actually pull value. So I've got a few more tests to do. 38.35. Oh, 38.35. And a loss there. And I want to see the seconds per gold value on these guys. Okay, rematch. And that's where things like where peasants, again, don't have to hold up for very long. Let's say a unit of, something can only hold up in melee combat for 60 seconds. If peasants can hold up for 20 seconds, the unit they got to hold up for has got to be worth 300 or more. So and plus in a lot of fights they do get their value back. So it's really, really close. I think they're an underappreciated unit in general. You need to they beat zombies because they have more charge bonus. But you need to keep the fighting though. 1v1 they lose. Okay. That's just like base Skaven slaves. Very good. Just such a cost-efficient unit. And base clan rats are also a very cost-efficient unit. But they're hard to use because there's so many. I mean, I can say I love them, but when you have 5 chaff units, I mean, they're not easy to manage, are they? So, I mean, it's for as much as I love them, I can't control that many units myself. But I do like watching people with micro skills do it. I find it very, very satisfying. Come on, boys, keep fighting. There we go. All right, 55.39. Miners, 12.13. 41.99. That was the worst one yet. 41.99. Yeah, 126 gold they lost in that fight. They're losing at about 30 gold a minute, which isn't too bad. I mean, if you're going to lose, that's not bad. Losing 30 gold a minute. I mean, there's fights, and I measured that units can lose like 300 gold per minute, so 30 gold per minute is not too bad. As far as a rate of gold loss goes, if you're going to lose, that's not bad. Man, those guys look good. This game is just so gorgeous. Every time I look at it, there's no angle where this game looks bad. Look at those beautiful dwarfs. Nasty, nasty elves. And one unit I can't wait for in game 3 is hobbits. I think that's going to be great, or whatever they are. Is it hobbits in this game? I wonder what maximum speed could debuff a noble. You can debuff a noble chariot down to 10% of its speed, Zach. So that's the most you can debuff anything. So let's say the chariot has 80 speed, you can debuff it to 8. That's the maximum. And it's actually, 2 runes of Wrath and Ruin, you got it down to just about there. So I think you got 48 and 48. 55.30. I always use that double Wrath and Rune of Wrath and Rune trick to catch things. It's really, really fun. 5530. Miners 1189. And Spearman 4105. So 112 gold on average lost. And let's get the seconds per gold one bigger. 0.83. So here's the thing. You get 0.83 seconds per gold in this fight. Whereas with the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, you get 0.87. So you're not losing a whole lot in terms of how long they hold versus how much they cost. I mean, you are still better off to use the Dwarf Warriors with great weapon. Even though Dwarf Warriors with great weapon lose every fight to High Elf Spearman, which is ridiculous, but it is what it is. All right, let's see those miners with blasting charges. I want to see how these guys do. Rook Boss Sue, share some of your thoughts on Bugman's Rangers and why they're so good. Because they got great uniforms. They look gorgeous. Oh man, Bugman's Rangers. I think the reason Bugman Rangers are so good is not just because of their regen and their melee defense and everything else like that. The reason I think they're so good, one of the reasons I think they're good, Rook Boss, is because players who mash up back lines are used to getting in there, destroying a Dowie line of Thunderers, say, and then getting out, and then the Thunderers are gone or they're routing. Where if they do that same thing against Bugman's Rangers, it doesn't happen. They get in there, they fight, and they might lose. Or they get out, and the Bugman's Rangers are still good, and they'll still have 48 out of, or is it 60 models? Or 75? No, like 60, let's say. They have 48 out of 60, and they'll regenerate their health back. That's why they're so good, I think, is because they're good to begin with in terms of stats, abilities, and regen and everything else like that. But because they're pretty powerful, I think people are used to getting in and trashing backline units. They don't spend enough time on Bugman's Rangers. And Bugman's Rangers end up really performing because they punch above their weight because players don't spend enough time taking them out. They think they can just get in there with a group of hounds and beat them up and go. Yeah, the melee stacks are decent. Yeah. Do standard warriors beat spearmen? My calculation says no, Zach, but I haven't tested that yet. So I will test it. I have here Dwarf Warriors versus High Elf Spearmen. I just haven't done the testing. So I calculated Dwarf Warriors with great weapons at 500 gold at work, and I said, and because I was just playing around on a spreadsheet, and my calculation showed the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons losing to High Elf Spearmen. I'm like, what? That can't be right. So that's why I'm home right now. Just ran home and started doing the testing, and sure enough, they lose pretty bad. I mean, they lose 100 gold in the bet. Dwarf Warriors against High Elf Spearmen, my calculation shows that they lose, but I haven't done the testing yet. So I'm going to do the Miners with Blasting Charges here, and we'll see. Miners with Blasting Charges will lose. For sure they're going to lose, but will they pull value is what I want to know, or how long they'll last. I don't think they can win. There's no way. I never share my thoughts. That's very clever, Zach. You own the internet today, my friend. Their melee stats are different. Yeah, Rook Boss, their stats are so good. I mean, their stats are amazing, actually. I think about they got 50 melee defense and 30 melee attack. It's something ridiculous. Let's go and look. Where are they? 750? Oh, 38 melee defense. Okay, well, still, but they got regeneration. 24 and 38 is good, but they got that charge defense against large, and that actually works out because you can turn to face something to shoot it, and when it charges into you, you're braced. So you don't take that impact damage, even though your units go flying. Like, the units go flying because they don't have a whole lot of mass, but they got that immune to psychology and the charge defense against large, so they just don't get scared off. And the thing is, like, most people come in, they think they're just going to beat them up and leave, but it just doesn't happen because they also have 75 leadership. Whereas you look at Rare Quarler's got like 66 or something. Yeah, Quarler's got 66 leadership. So 75 leadership, that 9 leadership is huge because when it comes to leadership, 64 is a magic number. 64 leadership is a magic number. The two magic numbers are 64 and 78. Anything 63 and under is sort of the end of units that can really be terror routed badly, and anything 78 and above is top tier leadership, and it's just the way that leadership debuffs work. So 66 is okay, but it's just on the wrong side. But once you get up to 75, boy, that starts making a pretty big difference. And they're at 75 leadership. And if they're around any Longbeards getting the encouragement, they're going to get an extra 5 on there. They become really hard to route. Bugman's Rangers own Squigs. Really? Exactly like you mentioned, their charge defense make them so good. Yeah, the replay I sent you last was the most struggle I had with Orcs versus Dwarfs, and it was because of them. Cool. I gotta watch that. I gotta watch it. And there's so much stuff I gotta do. I'm way behind in all my stuff here. So, anyways, let's take a look at miners with blasting charges. Now, there's no way they beat Spearmen. I don't think it. I think they're going to do some damage, but I don't think there's any way they beat the Spearmen. It just can't be, right? So we'll get here. So we'll see when this first damage starts coming in. And boom. So 59.52 when the damage starts, 52. And tested 8, 12, 19. Okay. So let's see how this goes. Whew! That was a pretty beefy chunk. 41 from 56. Okay, we'll keep this going. Yeah, they think they're winning, but they really aren't. Like, they are losing bad. But they think they're winning because that blasting charges. Yeah, see, they go now to now they understand they're losing, and the Spearmen know they're winning. Zach. Okay, gotta go. Love the chill stream format though. You have a good one, Zach. See you next time. If I don't know, I like having these because they are very relaxing. So you have a good one, eh? Well, I wonder if they're going to last longer. They probably have to, right? Because they're going to get more kills, so they're going to have less Spearmen killing them. I don't know. We'll see what the total... Like, they obviously did a lot more damage because they're already down to sort of getting to that half health area. Yeah, well, they're doing not too bad, and they are in fast forward. They're holding out for longer. Okay, there we go. So 54.53. Where is that compared to the other guys? 54.53. 299 seconds. 300 seconds they lasted. It's about the same. Miners with blasting charges finished with 1100. And Spearmen 28.15. Huh. So 71 gold, and that was half a blasting charge, and they lost. So talking about 50 gold, something like that differential. Mind you, minus blasting charges cost 75 more. We'll see what those blasting charges are worth at the end, kind of approximately, because we can't get a real good number because they're not getting their whole set of blasting charges off. But that's why it's so important with miners with blasting charges to get your blasting charges off. Because, man, if you spend an extra 75 gold and you don't get those charges off, that is a bad thing. Yeah, you see they got like half their charges off, I would say. Like if this is one area where formation makes an extra difference. Because if you do sort of a strung out formation, sometimes they can get their whole blasting charges off. But I mean, that's not the way I run the test like this, so I can be consistent over time. So if I go and do this test in 2 more years and something's changed with the way blasting charges work, I'll be able to actually see the difference. And what's weird is it looks like they're getting more ammo, but maybe this is a number of ammo left per Dwarfs. Because isn't that weird? You see their ammo going up? That looks weird. So maybe it's how many ammo versus how many Dwarfs. Because now their ammo is just about full. Yeah. So you can see there is how many Dwarfs left? Almost half, about 41, so a little more than half, and their ammo's full. So that's saying they used 35 of their 75 ammo in that first charge. Interesting. I never even knew that. Well, I guess you learn something new every day, don't you? And that's my lesson for today. Your ammo is is a total, and it doesn't matter how many. Doesn't matter. Maybe it matters how many units you have left. I don't know. I wonder if that works for quarrelers and such. I'm gonna have to see, or if it's just a bug, which it could be. 5441. Miners with blasting charges 1055. HE Spearman 2698. Yeah, you can see it's working out to about 3 DPS more, like a 50% more damage per second when you add in the blasting charges, and they're not even getting all their blasting charges off. Rematch. Work boss, man, this takes forever. Yeah, but it's just chilling, man. It's just relaxing. That's all. The testing is so. I mean, this is just one simple test. That's it. I mean, it's so. I mean, I'd have to do a bazillion tests to get something really, really useful, but this will give me an idea when I'm done all the testing. I think it'll give a pretty good idea of some of the units and some of the kind of the hot spots, areas to look at a little more closely when I'm done all the testing. But it does take a long time. But it's, Zero, the guys in the back didn't throw. Yeah, when you have formations like this, the guys in the back don't throw properly. Like, the only way to do it, like miners with blasting charges, this testing... Zero, because the way I do it, the formations, I'd never change the formations so that I can make the testing repeatable. But there are consequences to that. And I did a set of formation testing a long time ago where it really shows the differential, what happens with formations. But there are some units, like very special units, like miners with blasting charges being one, where if you string them out, they get off all their blasting charges, and that's more like how it is. But they're not getting their blasting charges, or they're getting more or less. So it's not the greatest test, but it'll give you some idea at least. But it's, it is what it is. Worker boss. By the time they settle their difference, the game is over. Yeah, that's Worker boss. That is the truth of dwarfs. Like, there are a lot of individual matchups with the Dowie where the Dowie can pull positive value, but it takes this is why Ironbreakers are a tough unit to use, because Ironbreakers can pull positive value against a lot of units, but it takes them 6 minutes, 7 minutes to do it. And by then, the rest of the battle's over. And if you tie up a group of Ironbreakers with like a 600 gold unit, you have a 600 gold tying up 1200 gold. I mean, for 8 minutes, even though you lose the value battle in that individual engagement, you've won the overall battle because you've tied up an extra 600 gold for 6 minutes. So it's hard calculation. It's like, this kind of testing doesn't give you all that information, unfortunately. It just gives you one small piece, right? Like, something to at least think about. But it is a small piece of the puzzle anyways. Orc boss, I mean, the matchup between the spears and the miners takes so long, they just sit their entire game, which favors the dwarfs because the miners are cheaper. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. So what I'm figuring out here, Orc boss, is I'm looking at this number called seconds per gold. So what I want to find out, and this is why I have this, is I want to say, okay, if I'm going to lose, I'm okay with losing if I can hold for a really long time. And so how much gold do I pay per each second of that battle going on? So I'm losing 112 gold in the engagement, but I'm holding them for 5 full minutes. So holding back a spearman with a unit of miners for 5 full minutes, I mean, the battle's over by the time this engagement is done. But is there a more valuable way to do this? So we're going to look at Dwarf Warriors and see what their seconds per gold is, their miners with blasting charges, what their seconds per gold is, just to look for a local optimum, right? That's it. Just to look for a local optimum. So 5440. I mean, it's not to say that this is the unit that you should bring to this matchup, because there's a bazillion other things that go on. It's just to kind of give a little insight to some of these very specific matchups. So miners with blasting charges. So what did we get here? 751. They held out for a long time. It's interesting because they must have got them down pretty low. They did. 1789 for the spearmen. That was very good for the blasting charges, and they didn't. But you saw they got more blasting charges off than they did before, and that was almost even on gold. So -5 gold, essentially even. So even though the miners with blasting charges lost, they did pretty decent in that fight there. Miners with blasting charges and rematch. here we go. Yeah, see about half there. See, they got about half of them off, and then they just don't want to throw. Then now they switch into melee mode, and the back guys could throw into this blob, but they're not. So away they go. Boss, HE spears the best spears. They're pretty good. They're pretty good, Orc Boss. It's that leadership. I mean, they got a 70 leadership. Is their standard 70? Yep, base value 70, and they're pretty good. Sour spears, yep, sour spears are. So like that's the thing. Sour spears are weird because Sour's warriors with shields are so damn good, but you compare them to Temple Guard are freaking amazing. They're such a good unit all around. Where sour spears just never seem like enough. But sour spears are pretty damn expensive. That's the thing compared to these spearmen. And once you get up to that 700 gold to 800 gold value and you have no armor piercing, it starts to be a sort of an unusable unit. I think maybe, I don't know. Like, because once you compare sour spears to the Temple Guard that's within there, Temple Guard is so damn good. Such a good unit. What, Zero, I know you do lots of testing. Do you use Pick Any General? Do you use unit testing fields and stuff like this as well for your testing? 5424. Because I've seen you post some nice tests too before. 5424. 29. So we got 1095 for the blasting charges. 1095. And we've got 2912 for the spearmen. 2912. We go 0. Pulled 80 gold that time. Rematch. Yeah, spears are kind of a funny thing. I know, the comparison I see lots is Empire spears chevroned up to High Elf spears. The High Elf spears are a little different. I don't know how they perform one to the other. I mean, I don't care about it enough to test them. I mean, I just care about dwarf units really. But I know Empire spears with shields are very good value for their money. But so are High Elf spearmen. High Elf spearmen are good value for money too, especially for what they do. Mostly just Glacial Lake and any general. Okay. Yeah, I tested a lot on Glacial Lake too because you get so close, especially with anything that can have Vanguard. But before I knew about Pick Any General and unit testing fields, I always just test on Glacial. But you can only get. I used to try and test sort of like 3 wide and 3 at a time, but it never ever did work. Like a lot of my old testing is you can see it's on like 2 or 3 years ago. It was on Glacial Lake, and that's when I used to try and test 2 units at once or 3 units at once. But this is just so much better testing 1 unit at a time. I mean, this is not the perfect test because of formations and all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things you can't do when you're doing testing like this, but it's very repeatable. That's the thing I really like about it. It's super repeatable, and so I mean, I've already gone back and did retest the stuff I did 2 years ago and found some interesting changes and stuff like that. A lot of changes between game 1 and game 2 testing, which I was really glad I had consistent testing. The thing is, once you start testing more than 1 unit, like doing like a line, I tried who was it? Me and Soulhammer got together and did long line testings where we took like 5 of each unit and we tested them. The problem is your leadership interacts. So once one thing starts routing, other things have leadership penalties and they can route when they're not supposed to. So it messes up your test. You can't get a good test that way. I mean, you can get an okay test. I mean, I just didn't like the results because they weren't consistent enough. 5510. So it looks like they're lasting a little bit longer. It's like 270 for the average for the basic miners, and these guys are sort of in that 300 mark. What it's looking like so far. Blaster 1122 and High Elf Spearman 2859. Okay. 73. What time is it? I won't be able to get all the testing done. I want to get, because I want to test the. I'll test the Dwarf Warriors maybe tomorrow night or the next night, because I think the Dwarf Warriors will actually pull a very high value for gold for money. They'll lose to the Spears, I think, but they might beat them. I don't know. But if they lose, they're just going to last forever. It'll be the ultimate wet noodle fight. So I think they'll pull excellent value in that fight. HE Spears have the mass of Dwarf. Do they? I thought HE High Elf Spears had 100 mass and Dwarf Warriors had 150. I could be wrong though. I thought their low mass was the problem. Or maybe High Elf Spears, maybe High Elf for some reason Spears have 150 mass where the rest of the High Elves have 100. Something like that. Rourke Boss, Eternal Guards are decent. Yeah, they are. Eternal Guards with shields are actually pretty good because they have armor piercing and that silver shield, so they're not too bad. 0 Crooked Elves. Agreed. All elves are crooked and deserve to be hit in the face with an axe. This is one of them things. Everyone knows that. And you can't tell the difference between boy elves and girl elves. They all look the same and they talk the same too. It's one of the problems when you're dealing with them. Okay, 55. Both are 150. Interesting. Okay. Then High Elf Spears are different than other High Elf units because Swordmasters of Hoeth have 100 mass, which I'm quite sure about because I did testing against with Swordmasters of Hoeth against chariots, and they get bowled around. And so High Elf Spears are 150. All the other spears are 100, and other High Elves, well, Swordmasters of Hoeth are 100 too. I think. I don't know about White Lions, but I know I did some tests and like chariots just bowled Swordmasters of Hoeth over like bowling pins. It's pretty brutal actually. Because miners did much better. The Dark Elves, Wood Elves, and Empire, Bretonnian, Norskin, Beastmen. Okay. Yeah, I saw some kind of conversation on the forums about spear mass. I couldn't remember exactly but I think that now that makes sense. Well, I guess it's good they at least have one unit with a little bit of mass. I mean, this is the thing. The High Elf Spearman's a funny unit. I mean, it's a really strong unit for its cost point. But it's hard to argue that it shouldn't be because that's all the High Elves have down there. The next cheapest unit is 800 gold. Like, how are you going to build an army without something decent down low to kind of build out your line? Because you don't have any chaff options for High Elves. So, 54.43. Okay, miners 10.28. Okay, 28.34 for the spearmen. 78 gold. Yeah, looking around to be 65, maybe 60. Average. Rematch. Rourke Boss, interesting. Yeah, like there is something where High Spear picked in nearly every build. Yep. Well, I mean, you kind of have to. Like I mean, you don't have to, but they're also good. I mean, it's not like they're picked because you have to too. They're also good. They're a good unit. I mean, I can't imagine a build where you wouldn't at least have 2 of them. You know, a 2 of for the High Elf Spears. But I mean, I suppose there's probably builds out there that are just all kiting builds or something where you wouldn't bring them. But yeah, they're picked at every build, so they must be good. Yeah, I like. The thing is, I get it that some units are picked even though they're not as good as other units in their class because they're the only option. But High Elf Spears, I think, even if there were some other units, you'd pick them because they're good. I think they're both picked because they're the only choice and they're also good. I mean, at least they're good in that and sort of this sort of testing. I mean, this sort of testing is really, really myopic because it's so narrow. You can't tell a whole. You can't extrapolate a lot from this sort of testing because it's so narrow. But they do pretty good in infantry testing, and they're an anti-large unit, right? I mean, they don't have a whole lot of AP, but I mean, they're all right for their cost of 500. And they're all right in a lot of situations, in terms of just holding the line for a little while, or even pulling some value, or adding some width to that high elf army, because the high elf are so expensive. 5439. They don't have. You can't build really wide armies with them. Or it's not easy to build wide armies that are good. 5439. Like, you got Skaven, it's super easy to build a wide army that's good. Same with the Bretonia. So minus the blasting charges. 1087. And High Elf Spearman. 2708. So we got 61 gold. So if we separate that out, this is 61 to 112 is about 55 plus 75. So that's saying the blasting charges are worth 130 gold against the spearman. That's half a blasting charge. Does that sound right? So, we did get one there, so you're kind of 120 gold. So against this high elf spearman, blasting charges, if you got them out, are kind of worth 200 plus gold, which is about 200 to 240, which is about right. Minus the blasting charges. I measured those blasting charges many times on many units, and they're kind of worth in that 150 to 200 gold range usually. Sea Guard are about 150 with shields. Really? Phoenix Guard are 140. Okay. I think High Elf Spears beat Murado Great Weapons for the same money. Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, High Elf Spears beat Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, and they're the same money, and they beat them pretty handily. They finished with an average of 33% of their health left versus Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons 13. But Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons, Miners, and Longbeards with Great Weapons all underperform quite a bit. So, anyways, that's the test so far. I'm going to have to break now and go grab a bite to eat and, say hi to the missus and do all that sort of stuff. So we'll end the stream here. So thanks everyone for the great chat. And if you watch this in the replay, those of you who are here early, I appreciate your showing up in the chat. I mean, this kind of testing is just for fun and relaxing, and it's something I really enjoy. And I've really enjoyed doing these live streams and having people show up and just shooting the shit. So it's been great. Thanks a lot. All right. Have a good one.